The auctioneer's voice cut through the autumn air like a knife, and Faith Campbell felt every word pierce her heart as she stood on the platform in Val Verde, Texas, her hands trembling at her sides while dozens of eyes assessed her worth like she was livestock. It was October 1878, and she had never imagined her life would come to this, standing before strangers while a man with a handlebar mustache catalogued her failures for everyone to hear. "Now, gentlemen, I must be honest about this one," the auctioneer called out, his voice booming across the dusty town square. "She is a hard worker, can cook and clean, mend and sew, but I have it on good authority from her late husband's family that she is barren. Could not give her husband a single child in 5 years of marriage." Faith wanted to disappear into the wooden planks beneath her feet. The crowd murmured, and she saw several men who had been considering stepping forward drift away toward other women on the platform. Her cheeks burned with shame and anger. It was not her fault that children had never come. She had prayed every night, had done everything the doctor suggested, but her husband Thomas had blamed her entirely when month after month brought nothing but disappointment. Then Thomas had died in a logging accident 6 months ago, and his family had wasted no time in taking everything. The house, the small plot of land, even the furniture Faith had brought into the marriage. They said she had been a curse on their son, that her barrenness had brought bad luck to the Campbell name. With nowhere to go and no family of her own, Faith had been forced into this humiliating position, standing at a mail-order bride auction, hoping some man would be willing to take her on despite her perceived deficiency. "Do I hear any offers?" the auctioneer asked, his enthusiasm notably dampened. "She is only 23 years old, still has many working years ahead of her." The silence stretched out painfully. Faith kept her eyes on the horizon, refusing to look at the crowd. She would not cry. She had already shed too many tears over circumstances beyond her control. "Then she is free to love without fear," a deep voice called out from the back of the crowd, and Faith's eyes snapped toward the sound. The crowd parted as a tall man walked forward. He wore dusty working clothes, a well-worn hat pushed back on his head revealing dark hair touched with gray at the temples. His face was weathered by sun and wind, with lines around his eyes that suggested he smiled often, though he was not smiling now. He looked to be in his early 30s, with broad shoulders and the kind of solid build that came from years of hard physical labor. "I am Quentin Quincy," he said, his voice steady and clear. "I own the Double Q Ranch about 5 miles west of here. I am not looking for a broodmare auctioneer. I am looking for a partner." The auctioneer's eyebrows rose. "Mr. Quincy, I feel obligated to remind you that this woman cannot bear children. The medical examination was quite clear." "I heard you the first time," Quentin said, his jaw tightening, "and I am saying it does not matter to me. There are enough orphans in this world who need homes. If Miss Campbell and I decide we want children around, we can provide for those who have none." Faith stared at him, unable to believe what she was hearing. In all the months since Thomas's death, no one had spoken to her with such respect, such simple human decency. This stranger was offering her not just a way out of her dire circumstances, but defending her right to exist as something more than a vessel for children. "Well then," the auctioneer said, clearly taken aback. "What is your offer, Mr. Quincy? What does the lady need?" Quentin asked, looking directly at Faith for the first time. His eyes were a deep brown, warm and honest. "What would make you feel secure in agreeing to come out to my ranch and see if we might make a good match?" the auctioneer sputtered. "Sir, that is not how this works. You make an offer, and if it is accepted, the arrangement is made." "I do not buy people," Quentin said flatly. "The war ended that particular evil 13 years ago. I am asking Miss Campbell what she would need to feel comfortable accepting my offer of a trial courtship. Faith found her voice, though it came out rougher than she intended. I would need to know that I would not be cast out if things do not work between us. I would need some assurance that I would not end up back here in 6 months, or worse. Quentin nodded. Fair enough. I will pay the auction fees that clear your debts. You come out to the ranch with the understanding that you have your own room, your own space. We court properly, get to know each other like civilized people. If after 3 months you want to leave, I will give you $200 and transportation to wherever you want to go. If things work out and we decide to marry, we build a life together as equals. Does that sound acceptable? More than acceptable, Faith said, her throat tight with emotion. It sounds almost too good to be true. I have never been much for pretty lies, Quentin said. Life on a ranch is hard work. The house needs a woman's touch. I will not pretend otherwise. I am gone long hours with the cattle and horses, but I will never raise a hand to you, never speak cruel words, and never blame you for something that is beyond your control. You have my word on that. The auctioneer looked between them, clearly confused by this departure from the normal proceedings. So you are offering to pay her fees and take her on a trial basis. I am offering to court her properly, Quentin corrected, with respect and honesty. Now, can we settle the financial matters so the lady can get down from that platform? It is undignified to keep her standing up there like she is a horse at auction. Within 20 minutes, the arrangements were made. Quentin paid the fees that Faith's former in-laws had demanded to release her from their custody, a sum that made her feel sick to think about but which he handed over without complaint. He offered her his arm as she stepped down from the platform, and she took it gratefully, her legs shaky after standing for so long in the October sun. My wagon is over here, he said quietly, guiding her through the crowd that was now watching them with undisguised curiosity. I brought a cushion for the seat because I figured whoever agreed to take a chance on my offer would have had a long day already. You planned this? Faith asked as they walked. I heard about the auction 2 weeks ago, Quentin admitted. I have been thinking about finding a wife, but the whole process felt wrong to me. Then I thought maybe I could at least offer someone a better situation than they might otherwise get. I did not know who would be here or what their circumstances would be. But when that auctioneer spoke about you that way, like your worth was only in childbearing, it made my blood boil. They reached his wagon, a sturdy vehicle with a strong team of horses. True to his word, there was a thick cushion on the seat and a blanket folded beside it. He helped her up with a steady hand, then climbed up beside her and took the reins. As they rolled out of Val Verde, Faith felt the tension slowly leave her shoulders. The town disappeared behind them, and the wide Texas landscape opened up ahead. The October sky was a brilliant blue, and the air had finally cooled from the brutal summer heat. Mesquite trees dotted the rolling hills, and in the distance, she could see the dark shapes of cattle grazing. Tell me about yourself, Quentin said after a while. Not the things that auctioneer said. Tell me what you want me to know. Faith took a breath, considering her words carefully. I grew up in Tennessee. My parents died when I was 18. Both of them took sick with fever within days of each other. I had no siblings, no other family. Thomas Campbell was a friend of my father's, quite a bit older than me. He offered marriage, offered security. I thought it was the right choice at the time. But it was not, Quentin asked gently. He was not cruel, not really, Faith said slowly, but he was not kind either. He married me because he wanted sons to carry on his name. When I could not give him that, I became a disappointment. Everything I did was measured against that one failure. The fact that I kept a good house, that I worked hard, that I was faithful and honest, none of that mattered in the end. It matters, Quentin said firmly. Those things matter a great deal. They rode in companionable silence for a while. Faith found herself stealing glances at this man who had so unexpectedly changed the course of her day, possibly her entire life. There was something solid about him, something steady. He did not fidget or fill the silence with nervous chatter. He simply drove the wagon with capable hands and let her have space to breathe. "What about you?" she finally asked. "Why does a ranch owner need to find a wife at an auction? Surely there are women in Val Verde who would be interested." Quentin's mouth quirked in something that was not quite a smile. "There are a few widow ladies who have made their interest known. But they all have the same assumption, that I am looking for someone to give me children to build a dynasty. When I tell them that is not my priority, they lose interest fast enough." "Why is it not your priority?" Faith asked, genuinely curious. "Most men want heirs." "I was married before," Quentin said quietly. "My wife, Sarah, she died 4 years ago, childbirth. The baby died too, a son." He swallowed hard. "She went through hell trying to have that baby. The doctors said she should not try again after the first miscarriage, but she was so determined. She thought I needed an heir. I told her I just needed her, but she would not listen." "I am sorry," Faith said softly. "The worst part is she died thinking she had failed me," Quentin continued, his voice rough with old grief. "Her last words were an apology. She apologized to me for not being able to give me a son. I would have given anything, everything, just to have her alive and well. The hell with heirs and dynasties." Faith reached out and gently touched his arm. "She did not fail you. Sometimes our bodies just cannot do what we want them to do." Quentin looked at her, really looked at her, and she saw understanding in his eyes. "Exactly. So when I heard that auctioneer call you barren like it was some kind of disease, like it made you less than, I knew I had to speak up. Life is too short and too hard to judge people on things they cannot control." The Double Q Ranch came into view as they crested a hill. It was larger than Faith had expected, with a sprawling ranch house, several outbuildings, a big barn, and extensive corrals. Cattle grazed across the rolling pastures, and she could see a few men working near one of the corrals. "It is a big operation," Faith said, feeling suddenly nervous. "I hope you do not expect me to manage all of this." "I have a foreman, Jack Martinez, who handles the men and the cattle operations," Quentin assured her. "There is a cook, old Pete, who handles meals for the ranch hands. The house is just for me and now you. I have been managing it on my own, but I will not lie to you, it is not in the best shape. I can cook enough to keep from starving and do laundry when I absolutely have to, but I am not good at the details." As they pulled up to the house, Faith could see what he meant. It was a good solid structure, but the porch needed sweeping, the windows could use a wash, and the flower beds that someone had once planted were overgrown with weeds. Still, it had good bones, and she could already see its potential. 3 men emerged from the barn as Quentin helped Faith down from the wagon. The oldest one, with a weathered face and a pronounced limp, must be old Pete. The other 2 were younger, one a Mexican man with kind eyes and the other a lanky cowboy who could not have been more than 20. "Everyone, this is Miss Faith Campbell," Quentin announced. "She will be staying here at the house for a while. I expect you all to treat her with the utmost respect." "Madam," old Pete said, tipping his hat. "Welcome to the Double Q. If you need anything, you just holler." "Thank you," Faith said, meaning it. "Pete, can you bring Miss Campbell's things inside?" Quentin asked. Then he turned to Faith with a slightly embarrassed expression. "Though I realize you might not have much." "Just a small trunk," Faith admitted. "My former in-laws were not generous when they sent me away." Quentin's jaw tightened, but he just nodded. "Then we will get you properly outfitted. Come on, let me show you the house." The interior was just as he had described, functional but lacking the touches that made a house a home. The furniture was sturdy but sparse. The kitchen was clean enough but disorganized. The main room had a fireplace and comfortable chairs, but no curtains on the windows, no rugs on the floor, no pictures on the walls. "Your room is upstairs," Quentin said, leading her up a solid staircase. "It is the biggest guest room, has its own washstand and a decent view of the sunrise." He opened the door to reveal a spacious room with a large bed, a wardrobe, a dresser with a mirror, and a comfortable chair by the window. The bed had clean sheets and a thick quilt, and someone had put fresh flowers in a vase on the dresser. "I had Pete's wife come over yesterday to air it out and make it nice," Quentin said. "My room is at the other end of the hall. The door stays closed, and I will never enter your room without permission. You have my word." Faith felt her eyes sting with unexpected tears. After months of being treated like a burden, like a failure, this simple respect felt overwhelming. "Thank you," she managed. "You have been more than kind." "I have been decent," Quentin corrected. "That should not be such a rare thing that it brings you to tears." He left her to settle in, and Faith sat on the bed, running her hands over the soft quilt. Through the window, she could see the vast expanse of the ranch, the cattle dotting the hillsides, the endless sky. It was beautiful and intimidating in equal measure. She unpacked her meager belongings, hanging her 3 dresses in the wardrobe and arranging her brush and few toiletries on the dresser. The trunk looked pathetically empty when she was done. 5 years of marriage, and this was all she had left to show for it. A knock on the door startled her. "Miss Campbell, I have water for washing if you would like," Pete's voice called. "Yes, thank you," she said, opening the door. The old cowboy brought in a pitcher of warm water and set it by the washstand. "Kitchen is downstairs whenever you are ready. I made stew for dinner. Nothing fancy, but it is filling." "I am sure it will be wonderful," Faith said. "Mr. Quincy said you usually cook for the ranch hands." "I do what I can," Pete said. "Lost my leg below the knee 5 years back when a horse rolled on me. Could not work cattle anymore, but I can still manage a kitchen. Mr. Quincy, he gave me a place here when most ranchers would have just let me go." "He seems like a good man," Faith said carefully. "The best," Pete said firmly. "He took over this ranch from his father 10 years ago and has built it into something special. Fair to his workers, honest in his dealings, never asks a man to do something he would not do himself. When Mrs. Sarah died, thought he might give up on everything. But he kept going, kept building. Just seemed like the heart went out of him for a while." "That is understandable," Faith said softly. "Maybe you can help bring some of it back," Pete said, then looked embarrassed. "Sorry, madam, not my place to say such things. I will leave you to freshen up." After he left, Faith washed her face and hands, changed into her better dress, and spent a few minutes trying to make herself presentable. Her blonde hair had been covered during the auction, but now she let it down, brushed it thoroughly, and pinned it up in a simple style. Her reflection showed a woman who looked tired and weary, but at least clean and neat. She made her way downstairs and found the kitchen easily enough. Quentin was already there, helping Pete set the table. He had washed up too and changed his shirt. Without his hat, she could see his face more clearly. He was a handsome man in a rugged, weathered way. Crow's feet bracketed his eyes, and there was a thin scar across his right cheekbone, but his features were even and strong. "I hope you are hungry," Quentin said when he saw her. "Pete makes the best stew in 3 counties. "Stop your flattery," Pete grumbled, but he looked pleased. They sat down to dinner, just the 2 of them, while Pete took food out to the bunkhouse for Jack and the other ranch hand. The stew was indeed excellent, rich with beef and vegetables, served with fresh bread that must have been baked that morning. "This is delicious," Faith said after the first few bites. "I have not had a meal this good in quite some time." "My in-laws did not feed you well?" Quentin asked, frowning. "They fed me," Faith said carefully, "but not generously. They made it clear I was an unwelcome burden. I tried to earn my keep by doing all the housework and mending, but nothing I did was ever quite good enough." "That is behind you now," Quentin said firmly. "You are not anyone's burden here. Tomorrow, after you have had a chance to rest, maybe you can look around the house and make a list of what you might need to be comfortable. If you want to take on managing the household, I would be grateful, and we can discuss compensation. But if you would rather just settle in and figure things out slowly, that is fine too." Faith considered this. "I would like to contribute," she said honestly. "I am not comfortable being idle, but I would appreciate a few days to get my bearings to understand how things work here." "That sounds reasonable," Quentin agreed. "Take all the time you need." They talked through dinner about simple things. He told her about the ranch, about how his father had started it 30 years ago and built it from nothing. How Quentin had grown up working cattle, had learned the business from the ground up. How he employed 6 men year-round and brought in extra hands during roundup and branding season. Faith told him about growing up in Tennessee, about her mother's garden and her father's small carpentry business. About the books she had loved to read, and the dreams she had once had of teaching school. About how all of that had been set aside when her parents died and survival became the only goal. As the evening wore on and the candles burned lower, Faith realized she felt more relaxed than she had in years. There was no tension in this house, no walking on eggshells, no waiting for criticism or blame. Quentin listened when she spoke, asked thoughtful questions, and never once made her feel like her words were unimportant. "I should let you get some rest," Quentin said finally. "It has been a long day for you. If you need anything during the night, my room is at the end of the hall, but there is also a bell by the back door that rings to the bunkhouse. Pete usually wakes at the slightest sound." "I will be fine," Faith assured him. "Thank you, Quentin, for everything today. I know I keep saying it, but I mean it. You have given me hope when I had none left." He reached across the table and gently squeezed her hand just for a moment. "We all deserve a second chance, Faith. I am glad I could offer you one." That night, Faith lay in her comfortable bed and watched the stars through her window. For the first time in longer than she could remember, she fell asleep without crying, without that tight knot of anxiety in her chest. Whatever tomorrow brought, she was no longer trapped. She was no longer defined by what her body could not do. She was simply Faith, and maybe that could be enough. The next morning she woke to the sound of roosters and the distant lowing of cattle. Sunshine streamed through her window, bright and warm. She dressed in one of her work dresses and made her way downstairs, following the smell of coffee. Quentin was in the kitchen, pouring coffee into 2 tin cups. He was already dressed for the day's work, his hair damp from washing. He smiled when he saw her, a real smile that reached his eyes and made him look years younger. "Good morning," he said. "I hope I did not wake you. I tried to be quiet." "The roosters woke me," Faith said. "I am used to early mornings. Thomas was a logger. He expected breakfast before dawn." "Pete will bring breakfast up from the bunkhouse in a bit," Quentin said, handing her one of the cups. "But I always have coffee first. Fair warning, I make it strong enough to strip paint." Faith took a cautious sip and nearly choked. He had not been exaggerating. "That is certainly bracing," she managed. Quentin laughed, a deep, genuine sound. "Sarah used to say the same thing. She would add half a cup of milk just to make it drinkable." "There is milk?" Faith asked hopefully. "In the cold box," Quentin said, pointing to a wooden box built into the wall where cool air from an underground stream kept things fresh. "Help yourself to anything you find in this kitchen. Everything here is for you too." They had breakfast together. Eggs and bacon and biscuits that Pete had somehow managed to make light and fluffy. Quentin explained his plan for the day, how he would be working with Jack to move some cattle to a different pasture, how one of the young hands, Billy, would be checking fence lines on the north section. "What would you like me to do today?" Faith asked. "Whatever you want," Quentin said. "Explore the house, rest, take a walk around the property. There is no pressure, Faith. You have only been here one night." "I would like to start understanding how things work," Faith said. "Maybe I could clean up the kitchen after breakfast, get familiar with where things are stored." "If that is what you want to do," Quentin said, "but please do not feel obligated." After he left for his work, Faith spent the morning exploring the house thoroughly. It was larger than any place she had ever lived, with a formal dining room that clearly never got used, a parlor with good furniture covered in dust, and a study lined with books. Upstairs, besides her room and Quentin's, there were 3 other bedrooms, all empty and waiting. She found cleaning supplies in a pantry and set to work, starting with the kitchen. It felt good to have a purpose, to see the results of her labor. By midday, the kitchen was spotless, every dish clean and put away, every surface scrubbed, the floor swept and mopped. Pete came in as she was finishing and let out a low whistle. "Well now, that is something. This kitchen has not looked this good since Mrs. Sarah was alive." "I hope it is all right that I cleaned," Faith said, suddenly worried. "Quentin said I could do whatever I wanted, but maybe I should have asked first." "Madam, you just made my life a whole lot easier," Pete said. "I have been trying to keep this kitchen functioning while also cooking for the hands. Having it properly clean and organized is a blessing. If you do not mind my saying, you look like you could use some lunch. I made sandwiches." They sat together at the now clean table, and Pete told her stories about the ranch, about the men who worked there, about the cattle drives and the hard winters, and the occasional excitement when wild horses were spotted on the property. He was a natural storyteller, and Faith found herself laughing at his descriptions of various mishaps and adventures. "Mr. Quentin, he has been alone too long," Pete said eventually, his tone more serious. "Man needs more than just work to live for. When he spoke up for you yesterday at that auction, it was the first time in years I have seen him fight for something personal. Made me think maybe there is still fire in him after all." "He spoke up because it was the right thing to do," Faith said, "not because of me specifically." "Maybe," Pete allowed, "but he brought you here. He is giving you a chance. That is more than just doing the right thing. That is opening himself up to possibility again." Faith thought about that as she spent the afternoon tackling the parlor. She washed the windows until they sparkled, beat the dust from the furniture, swept and scrubbed the floor. She found curtains in a chest and hung them, instantly making the room feel more welcoming. There were photographs on the mantel, and she studied them carefully, seeing a younger Quentin standing next to a pretty woman with dark hair and a gentle smile. That must be Sarah. In the photograph, they both looked happy, full of hope for the future. By the time Quentin returned in the late afternoon, Faith had transformed 3 rooms. He stopped in the doorway of the parlor and just stared. "Faith, you did not have to do all this," he said. "I wanted to," she assured him. "It felt good to be useful, to see progress. I hope you do not mind." "Mind? The house has not looked this good in years," Quentin said. "But I do not want you to exhaust yourself trying to prove your worth. You already have worth just by being here." "Old habits," Faith admitted. "I am used to having to justify my existence through work." "That ends now," Quentin said firmly but kindly. "You work because you want to, because it makes you happy, not because you are trying to earn the right to exist. Understood?" Faith felt her throat tighten with emotion. "You are a remarkable man, Quentin Quincy." I am just a man who knows what it is like to lose someone because they did not believe they were enough just as they were, he said quietly. I will not watch that happen again. That evening, they had dinner together again, and the conversation flowed more easily than before. They talked about books they had read, places they had been, foods they liked and disliked. Faith learned that Quentin could not stand peas but loved apples in any form. He learned that she had once fallen out of a tree while trying to rescue a kitten and had broken her arm in 2 places. "Did you save the kitten?" he asked, grinning. "I did," Faith said. "She lived to be 14 years old and was the most ungrateful creature you ever met, but I loved her anyway." "That is the thing about love," Quentin said thoughtfully. "It does not require the other party to earn it or deserve it. It just is." As the days turned into weeks, Faith settled into life at the Double Q. She worked on the house because it gave her satisfaction, not because she felt obligated. Room by room, she brought order and beauty to the space. She hung curtains, arranged flowers, moved furniture to catch the best light. The house began to feel alive again, warm and welcoming. Quentin gave her money for supplies, and she took the wagon into Val Verde with Pete as her driver and bought fabric, dishes, cleaning supplies, and a few things for herself. The women in town whispered and stared, but Faith held her head high. She had nothing to be ashamed of. In the evenings after dinner, she and Quentin would sit in the parlor and talk. Sometimes they read, each absorbed in their own book but comfortable in the shared silence. Sometimes they played checkers, and Faith discovered that Quentin was a terrible loser who would accuse her of cheating in increasingly ridiculous ways just to make her laugh. "You distracted me by being pretty," he declared after she won for the 3rd time in a row. "I was sitting quietly reading my book until you challenged me to this game," Faith pointed out, trying not to smile. "Exactly. Quietly being pretty. Very distracting," he said, and there was something in his eyes that made her heart skip. They were becoming friends, Faith realized. But there was something more building beneath the friendship, a tension that was not uncomfortable but was definitely there. She found herself noticing things about him. The way his eyes crinkled when he smiled. The gentle way he handled the horses. The care he took with his men, knowing their families, their concerns, treating them as valued members of a team rather than just hired labor. And sometimes she would catch him looking at her with an expression she could not quite read. Something warm and wondering and almost hesitant, like he was afraid to reach for what he wanted. One evening in November, about 6 weeks after Faith had arrived, Quentin invited her to ride out with him to check on some cattle in the far pasture. She had learned to ride in the weeks she had been at the ranch, practicing on a gentle mare named Daisy. She was not an expert, but she could manage well enough for a simple ride. They rode out in the late afternoon, the autumn sun casting everything in gold and amber. The air was crisp and clean, and the cattle were peaceful, grazing contentedly. They dismounted near a small creek and let the horses drink while they sat on a fallen log and watched the sun begin its descent toward the horizon. "I used to come out here with Sarah," Quentin said quietly. This was her favorite spot on the ranch. She said it was peaceful away from everything else. "It is beautiful," Faith said. "I can see why she loved it." "Faith, I need to be honest with you about something," Quentin said, turning to face her. "When I brought you here, I told myself I was just offering you a safe place, a chance to figure out your next step. I told myself I was not looking for anything more than maybe a partnership, someone to help with the house and share meals with." "But," Faith prompted, her heart beating faster. "But I have been lying to myself," Quentin admitted, "because every day I find myself looking forward to seeing you. Every evening I am happier than I have been in years just sitting with you in the parlor. You make me laugh. You make me want to be better. And I know it has only been 6 weeks. I know we agreed to take 3 months, but I needed to tell you that this is not just convenience for me anymore." Faith reached out and took his hand, feeling the calluses from years of hard work, the strength in his fingers as they closed around hers. "It is not just convenience for me either," she said softly. "I have never felt as seen, as valued as I do here with you. You have given me so much more than just a place to stay. You have given me back my sense of self-worth." "You always had worth," Quentin said fiercely. "You just needed to be somewhere you could see it clearly." "Quentin, I need to know something," Faith said, gathering her courage. "That day at the auction when you said I was free to love without fear, what did you mean?" He was quiet for a long moment, his thumb rubbing gentle circles on the back of her hand. "I meant that so many women are valued only for their ability to have children. Their whole worth is tied up in their fertility. And I thought, if you cannot have children, then you are free from that particular cage. You can be loved for who you are, not what you can produce. You can love without the fear that if your body fails in that one specific way, you will be cast aside." "But you lost a wife and child," Faith said. "How can you say it does not matter to you?" "I lost Sarah because she thought giving me a child was more important than her own life," Quentin said, his voice rough with old pain. "I would have given anything to have her alive and well, even if it meant never having children. I still would." "So yes, Faith, I mean it when I say it does not matter to me. I would rather have you, whole and healthy and happy, than chase some dream of heirs and dynasties." Faith felt tears slip down her cheeks. "I am falling in love with you," she whispered. "I did not think I would ever say those words again, but I am." Quentin reached up and gently wiped her tears away. "I am falling in love with you too," he said. "If you will have me, flaws and grief and all, I would like to court you properly. Not just as a trial, but with the intention of building a real future together." "Yes," Faith said simply. "Yes to all of it." He leaned in slowly, giving her every chance to pull away, and kissed her softly. It was gentle and sweet and full of promise. When they parted, they were both smiling. "We should head back before it gets dark," Quentin said. "But Faith, I want you to know there is no rush. We can take all the time you need to be sure." "I am already sure," Faith said, "but I am happy to take our time anyway. This is too good to rush through." They rode back to the ranch as the stars began to appear, and Faith felt a joy she had never expected to experience. She was falling in love, truly in love, for the first time in her life. And it was with a man who valued her for exactly who she was. The months that followed were the happiest Faith had ever known. She and Quentin courted properly, with all the old-fashioned customs. He brought her flowers from the meadow. She made his favorite apple pie. They took long walks in the evening, talking about everything and nothing. He was patient and respectful, never pushing for more than she was ready to give. In December, he took her to Val Verde for the Christmas social. She wore a new dress she had sewn herself, blue wool that brought out her eyes. Quentin wore his best suit and looked so handsome that Faith could barely take her eyes off him. They danced together in the town hall, and if people whispered about the barren woman and the widower rancher, neither of them cared. "I love you, Faith Campbell," Quentin said as they waltzed together. "I want to spend the rest of my life with you." "I love you too, Quentin Quincy," Faith said, her heart full to bursting. "More than I ever thought possible." On Christmas Eve, back at the ranch, Quentin got down on one knee in front of the parlor fireplace. He held out a simple gold band, the firelight making it glow. "Faith Campbell, will you marry me? Will you be my wife, my partner, my love for as long as we both shall live?" "Yes," Faith said, laughing and crying at the same time. "Yes, absolutely yes." He slipped the ring onto her finger, and it fit perfectly. Then he stood and kissed her, deep and passionate, holding her like she was the most precious thing in the world. When they finally broke apart, both breathless, Pete was standing in the doorway with tears streaming down his weathered cheeks. "About damn time," the old cowboy said. "I will go tell the boys. We are having a celebration tomorrow that this ranch will never forget." They were married in January 1879, in a simple ceremony in the parlor of the ranch house. The preacher from Val Verde officiated, and all the ranch hands attended, along with a few friends from town. Pete gave Faith away, honored to stand in for the father she had lost. Old tears and new joy mixed freely as they exchanged vows. "I, Quentin, take you, Faith, to be my lawfully wedded wife. I promise to love you, honor you, cherish you in sickness and in health, for richer or poorer, as long as we both shall live. I promise to value you for exactly who you are, to never make you feel less than, to build a life with you based on respect and love and true partnership. I, Faith, take you, Quentin, to be my lawfully wedded husband. I promise to love you, honor you, cherish you in sickness and in health, for richer or poorer, as long as we both shall live. I promise to be your partner in all things, to support your dreams, to build a home filled with love and laughter, to choose you every day for the rest of my life." When the preacher pronounced them husband and wife, Quentin kissed Faith with such tenderness and joy that there was not a dry eye in the room. The celebration that followed was raucous and joyful. Pete had outdone himself with the food, and someone produced a fiddle, and they danced until late into the night. That night, in the room that had been Quentin's but was now theirs, he was gentle and patient with Faith. Her first marriage had been about duty and expectation. This was about love and desire and genuine connection. He took his time, made sure she felt safe and cherished, and when they finally came together as husband and wife, it was beautiful and right in a way Faith had never experienced before. "I love you," she whispered in the darkness afterward, curled against his chest, feeling his heart beat steady and strong beneath her cheek. "I love you too," he murmured, his arms tightening around her. "My wife, my Faith." The first year of their marriage was an adjustment, as all marriages are, but it was also joyful. They learned each other's rhythms and habits. Faith discovered that Quentin sang off-key in the barn when he thought no one could hear. Quentin learned that Faith talked to the chickens like they were old friends. They had their first real argument about whether to expand the cattle operation or invest in better breeding stock, and Faith discovered that Quentin fought fair and was willing to admit when she had a good point. "You are right," he said after she had laid out her reasoning. "Better breeding stock will serve us better in the long run. I am sorry I was stubborn about it." "You are allowed to have opinions," Faith said, "as long as you are willing to listen to mine too." "Always," he promised. In the spring, Quentin took Faith to meet with an orphanage in San Antonio. They had talked about it through the winter, about the possibility of providing a home for children who needed one. The matron of the orphanage, a stern woman named Mrs. Patterson, was skeptical at first. "You want to take in orphans even though you have no children of your own?" she asked. "We want to provide a home for children who need one," Quentin said firmly. "We have love to give and a good life to offer. Why does it matter if they share our blood?" Mrs. Patterson softened at that. "Many couples want only infants, only children they can pretend are their own. You would take older children. We would take whoever needs us most," Faith said. "Within reason, we want to be honest about our capabilities. But yes, age is not the primary concern." They left San Antonio 2 weeks later with 2 children. Tommy was 8 years old, serious and quiet, with dark hair and darker eyes that had seen too much hardship. His parents had died of cholera, and he had been living on the streets before the orphanage took him in. Lily was 6, a whirlwind of energy and questions, with red hair and freckles. Her mother had died in childbirth, and her father had brought her to the orphanage because he could not care for her while working as a traveling salesman. The children were terrified and trying not to show it. Tommy held Lily's hand like a lifeline in the wagon on the way back to the ranch. Faith sat in the back with them while Quentin drove, talking quietly, not pushing, just offering her presence as a comfort. "Are you going to send us back if we are bad?" Tommy asked finally, his voice barely above a whisper. "No," Faith said firmly. "You are ours now. You are part of our family. Even if you make mistakes, even if you struggle, you are not going anywhere. That is what family means." "What if you have real children?" Tommy pressed. "Will you want us then?" "You are real children," Quentin said from the front of the wagon, his voice gentle but clear. "And you are our children now. Nothing will change that." Lily started crying, and Faith pulled the little girl into her lap, holding her close. "It is all right to be scared," she murmured. "This is all new and strange. But I promise you, sweetheart, we are going to take care of you, both of you." When they arrived at the ranch, Pete had prepared a feast. The old cowboy had a soft heart under his gruff exterior, and he had been almost as excited as Quentin and Faith about the children coming. He had even cleaned up the bunkhouse and made it presentable in case the children wanted to visit. The ranch hands treated Tommy and Lily like honored guests. Jack showed Tommy the horses and promised to teach him to ride properly. Billy, the young cowboy, taught Lily how to whistle using a blade of grass. By the end of the first evening, some of the fear had left the children's eyes, replaced by cautious hope. Faith and Quentin had spent weeks preparing 2 of the empty bedrooms. Tommy's room was painted a warm brown and had a bed with a patchwork quilt, a dresser, and a shelf for the books Faith had already started collecting. Lily's room was yellow like sunshine, with white curtains and a rag doll that Faith had sewn herself sitting on the pillow. "This is mine?" Lily asked, her voice awed. "My own room, all yours," Faith confirmed. "You can arrange it however you like." "I have never had my own room before," Lily whispered. That night, after the children were settled, Faith found Quentin on the porch looking out at the stars. She slipped her arms around him from behind, resting her cheek against his back. "Thank you," she said softly. "For what?" He asked, covering her hands with his own. "For this, for all of it. For showing me that family is not about blood, it is about love and choice and commitment." "I should be thanking you," Quentin said. "You have brought this house back to life. You have brought me back to life. And now we have children to love and raise. We have built something real and good, Faith." The adjustment period was not without challenges. Tommy had nightmares and would wake up screaming, convinced he was back on the streets with no food and no safety. Faith or Quentin would sit with him until he calmed down, reassuring him that he was home, that he was safe. Lily was afraid of being left behind and would panic if Faith went to town without her. So Faith started taking her along, showing her that she could go away and always come back. But slowly, gradually, the children began to believe that this was real, that they were not going to be sent back, that they had found a home. Tommy proved to have a natural way with animals. He spent hours in the barn with Jack, learning about the horses and cattle. He was patient and gentle, and the animals responded to him. By summer, Quentin was teaching him to rope and ride, and the boy was thriving. Lily was bright and curious, always asking questions about everything. Faith started teaching her to read and discovered that the girl had a quick mind and a love of stories. They would sit together in the parlor, sounding out words, and Lily would beam with pride every time she managed a new sentence. "I can read," she announced one evening at dinner. "I read a whole page by myself today." "That is wonderful, sweetheart," Quentin said, and the pride in his voice was genuine. He loved these children as fully as if they had been born to him. In August, Faith realized she was pregnant. At first, she could not believe it. She had been examined by multiple doctors during her first marriage, and they had all agreed that she would never conceive. But the signs were unmistakable. The morning sickness, the exhaustion, the tenderness. She went to the doctor in Val Verde and he confirmed it. "It is rare, but it happens," the doctor said. "Sometimes the problem is not with the woman at all. Sometimes it is just that the match was not right. You are definitely with child, Mrs. Quincy. I would estimate you are about 3 months along." Faith sat in the doctor's office, stunned. All those years of being called barren, of being blamed, and it had not been her fault at all. It had just been that she and Thomas were not compatible in that particular way. She felt a complicated mix of emotions. Joy, certainly. Relief that she had not been broken after all. But also anger at all the years of shame and blame she had endured for something that was not her failing. She did not tell Quentin right away. She needed time to process it herself. That evening, she watched him with Tommy and Lily. He was teaching them to play checkers, and all three of them were laughing at Tommy's attempted revenge after Lily beat him soundly. "She is too smart for us," Quentin declared. "We might as well surrender now." "Never surrender," Tommy said, making his next move with exaggerated confidence, only to have Lily jump 3 of his pieces in one turn. Faith felt tears sting her eyes. This was her family. These 3 people who loved her, who valued her, who had chosen her as much as she had chosen them. And now there would be another. But it did not change what they already had. It only added to it. That night in their bedroom, she told Quentin. He was getting ready for bed, and she was sitting by the window, looking out at the stars. "I went to the doctor today," she said quietly. He turned immediately, concern on his face. "Are you all right? Are you ill?" "I am pregnant," Faith said, watching his face carefully. Quentin stood perfectly still for a long moment. Then he crossed the room and knelt in front of her, taking her hands in his. "How do you feel about this?" he asked, not congratulations, not excitement, just a genuine question about her feelings. That was so perfectly Quentin that Faith had to smile even as tears ran down her face. "Scared," she admitted. "Confused, happy, angry about all the years I was blamed for something that was not my fault. Worried about how Tommy and Lily will react, terrified something will go wrong, but also, underneath all of that, joyful." "I love you," Quentin said fiercely, "and I am happy if you are happy. But Faith, I need you to know this does not change anything between us. You do not have to prove anything to me or anyone else. If you want this baby, then I am thrilled and we will welcome it with open arms. But if you are scared, if you do not want to risk your health, then we have options. We already have 2 beautiful children. You do not owe me or anyone else another one. I want this baby," Faith said softly. "I am scared, but I want it. Then we will face whatever comes together," Quentin promised. He leaned forward and kissed her gently. "And Faith, I am sorry for what you went through in your first marriage. I am sorry you were blamed for something that was not your fault. You deserved better than that." "I have better now," Faith said, cupping his face in her hands. "I have you, I have Tommy and Lily. I have a home and a life I never dreamed possible. Whatever happens, I am grateful for all of it." They told the children the next day. Tommy and Lily had very different reactions. Lily was thrilled, immediately talking about how she would help with the baby and teach it things. Tommy was quieter, more reserved. That evening, Faith found him sitting on the porch, looking out at the sunset. She sat down beside him, not speaking, just offering her presence. "Are you going to love the baby more than me?" Tommy finally asked, his voice small. "Because it will really be yours." Faith put her arm around him and pulled him close. "Tommy, you are really mine. You became mine the day we brought you home. This baby growing inside me, it is just another addition to our family, but it does not make you any less my son. You are my firstborn child, the first one who made me a mother. Nothing will ever change that. Promise." Tommy asked, and he sounded so young and vulnerable that Faith's heart ached. "I promise," she said firmly. "You are stuck with me, kid. For the rest of your life, you are going to have a mother who loves you and thinks you are wonderful. And when you are a grown man with children of your own, I am going to embarrass you by telling them stories about how sweet you were as a boy." Tommy laughed, a little watery but genuine. "I am not sweet. You are the sweetest," Faith insisted, "and the bravest. Do you know how much courage it took to trust us, to let yourself be part of this family after everything you had been through? I am proud of you, Tommy, every single day." He hugged her then, tight and fierce, and Faith held him and knew that everything was going to be all right. The pregnancy was not easy. Faith was sick for months, exhausted and struggling, but Quentin was there every step of the way. He brought her tea and crackers in the morning. He took over more of the household chores without making her feel useless. He sat with her in the evenings and read to her when she was too tired to hold a book herself. Tommy and Lily were wonderful too. Tommy took on extra chores without being asked, quietly helping Pete in the kitchen and doing small jobs around the house. Lily would sit with Faith and tell her elaborate stories, keeping her entertained and distracted from the discomfort. As winter approached and Faith's belly grew round, the whole ranch seemed to hold its breath. Everyone remembered what had happened to Sarah. Pete watched Quentin with worried eyes, and Faith knew he was afraid of losing another woman he had come to care for like a daughter. "I am going to be fine," Faith told Pete one afternoon as he fussed over her, insisting she sit down and rest. "I am healthy and strong. The doctor says everything is progressing normally." Mrs. Sarah was healthy too, Pete said quietly, until she was not. "I know you are scared," Faith said gently, "but this is not the same situation. I am not trying to prove anything to anyone. I am just having a baby, and whatever happens, I am surrounded by people who love me. That makes all the difference." In February, on a cold, clear night with stars blazing overhead, Faith went into labor. It was long and difficult, and there were moments when she understood why women feared this process. But Quentin was beside her the whole time, holding her hand, wiping her face with cool water, telling her she was doing great even when she was convinced she could not go on. The doctor from Val Verde had come to stay at the ranch for the last 2 weeks of the pregnancy, and he supervised everything with calm competence. And finally, as dawn broke over the Texas hills, Faith's baby was born. "It is a boy," the doctor announced, holding up a squalling, red-faced infant. "And he is healthy. Good lungs on this one." Faith fell back against the pillows, exhausted and relieved and overwhelmed. Quentin was crying, his face wet with tears as the doctor placed the baby in Faith's arms. "We have a son," Quentin whispered. "Faith, we have a son." The baby had dark hair like Quentin and blue eyes that would probably change color in time. He was beautiful and perfect, and Faith felt a surge of love so intense it took her breath away. Tommy and Lily were allowed in a few minutes later. Tommy approached slowly, his eyes wide, while Lily bounded over to the bed with her usual energy. "Can I hold him?" Lily asked. "Please," very carefully, Faith said. "Sit down first and I will put him in your arms." Lily sat in the chair beside the bed, and Faith carefully transferred the baby to her. The little girl's face transformed with wonder as she looked down at her baby brother. "He is so small," she whispered. "I was this small once, even smaller," Quentin said. "You were a tiny little thing." Tommy stood back, watching but not approaching. Faith extended her hand to him. "Come here, sweetheart. Come meet your brother." "What is his name?" Tommy asked as he moved closer. Faith and Quentin had discussed this. They had chosen a name that honored both their families while being uniquely the child's own. "His name is Samuel Thomas Quincy," Faith said, watching Tommy's face. "We wanted him to carry your name too, so he always knows he is part of this family." Tommy's eyes filled with tears. "Really?" "Really," Quentin confirmed. "You are brothers now, all three of you. You will fight sometimes the way siblings do, but you will also have each other's backs. That is what family means." Faith recovered well from the birth, much to everyone's relief. Samuel was a good baby, healthy and strong. The house was chaos with 3 children, especially with a newborn, but it was a joyful chaos. Tommy took his role as big brother seriously, always checking on Samuel and helping with Lily. Lily loved to sing to the baby, making up elaborate songs about cows and horses and the Texas sky. As Samuel grew from an infant to a toddler, the family settled into new rhythms. Faith discovered that motherhood to 3 children with 3 very different needs was challenging but deeply rewarding. Quentin was an involved father, changing diapers and walking the floor with a crying baby without complaint. The ranch hands doted on all 3 children, each of them becoming honorary uncles. When Samuel was 2, Faith found herself pregnant again. This time there was less fear, more confidence. She knew her body could do this. She knew she was strong enough. And in November of 1882, she gave birth to a daughter, Margaret Rose, who came into the world howling with indignation and did not stop having opinions about everything from that day forward. By then, Tommy was 12 and working seriously with the ranch hands, learning the business from the ground up. Lily was 10 and had declared she wanted to be a teacher someday, spending hours with her books. Samuel was a sturdy 2-year-old who followed Tommy everywhere, and Margaret was a force of nature even as an infant. "We have built something amazing," Faith said one evening as she and Quentin sat on the porch, watching the sunset while the children played in the yard. "A family that has nothing to do with blood and everything to do with love. You built this," Quentin said, taking her hand. "You took a broken man and a lonely house and turned it into a home. You gave me back my life, Faith." "We gave each other a second chance," Faith corrected. "That day at the auction, when you said I was free to love without fear, you gave me the greatest gift anyone has ever given me. You gave me permission to be enough just as I was." "You always were enough," Quentin said. "I just wish you could have known it sooner." The years that followed were good ones. The ranch prospered under Quentin's management, and Faith's careful household economy helped them weather hard times and make the most of good years. Tommy grew into a fine young man, serious and hardworking, with his father's integrity and his mother's kindness. Lily became a teacher in Val Verde, beloved by her students for her enthusiasm and creativity. Samuel followed his father and brother into ranching, and Margaret shocked everyone by declaring she wanted to be a doctor and having the stubbornness to make it happen, despite all the obstacles women faced in that profession. In 1895, Tommy married a girl from a neighboring ranch, a sweet woman named Helen who fit perfectly into the family. They had their first child the following year, a daughter they named Faith after the grandmother who had taught Tommy what unconditional love looked like. Lily married a lawyer from San Antonio and had 3 boys who inherited their mother's red hair and endless energy. Through it all, Faith and Quentin remained the center of their growing family. They had their arguments and their struggles, as all couples do. There were hard years when drought threatened the ranch, when illness struck, when the world seemed determined to test their resolve. But they faced everything together, their love deepening and maturing with each passing year. On their 20th wedding anniversary, Quentin surprised Faith by taking her back to the spot by the creek where he had first told her he was falling in love with her. They rode out together, older and grayer but still strong, still together. "You remember what I said to you here?" Quentin asked as they sat on the same fallen log, watching the water flow past. "You said you were falling in love with me," Faith replied. "You said I made you want to be better." "I was wrong," Quentin said, and Faith turned to him in surprise. "I was not falling in love with you. I was already in love with you. I just finally admitted it that day." Faith laughed and kissed him, soft and sweet. "I love you, Quentin Quincy. 20 years married, and I love you more every day." "I love you too, Faith Quincy, my partner, my wife, my best friend." "You took what that auctioneer meant as a curse and turned it into a blessing. You built a family not on obligation but on choice and love. You are the most remarkable woman I have ever known." They sat together as the sun set, holding hands like young lovers, comfortable in their silence and their certainty. They had built something real and lasting, a family that would continue long after they were gone, a legacy of love and acceptance and second chances. When Samuel was 21, Faith sat him down and told him the story of how she and Quentin had met. She told him about the auction, about the auctioneer calling her Barren, about his father standing up and saying she was free to love without fear. "That is why you and Lily are as much our children as Margaret and I are," Samuel said, understanding dawning in his eyes. "Exactly," Faith confirmed. "Family is not about blood. It is about love and choice and commitment. Your father taught me that. And I wanted you to know where you came from, the circumstances that brought us all together, because there is no shame in any of it. There is only love." Samuel hugged her tight. "You are the best mother anyone could ask for," he said. "Thank you for telling me." As Faith entered her 50s, she and Quentin began to slow down, handing more of the ranch operations over to Tommy and Samuel while they took more time to enjoy the fruits of their labor. They traveled a little, visiting Lily in San Antonio and seeing parts of the country they had never explored. They spent long evenings with their grandchildren, telling stories and passing on the family history. Pete passed away peacefully in his sleep in 1902, at the age of 78. The whole family mourned the old cowboy who had been there from the beginning, who had welcomed Faith with open arms and helped make the Double Q into a home. They buried him on a hill overlooking the ranch, with a view of the land he had loved. Jack Martinez retired a few years later, though he stayed in a small cottage on the ranch property and still came around to offer advice and tell stories. Billy had moved on years before, starting his own small ranch with his wife and children. As the 20th century progressed and the world changed around them, Faith and Quentin remained constants, beloved by their family and respected by their community. They had lived through the end of the Old West and the beginning of a new era, had seen Texas grow and change, had weathered economic panics and political upheavals. Through it all, they had each other. In 1910, on a warm spring evening, Faith and Quentin celebrated their 31st wedding anniversary surrounded by their children, grandchildren, and even a few great-grandchildren. Margaret had become a doctor as she had dreamed, working in a clinic in Houston. Lily's 3 boys were all doing well, one following his mother into teaching, one studying law like his father, and one working on the ranch with his Uncle Tommy and Uncle Samuel. Tommy and Helen had 4 children now, all grown and starting families of their own. Samuel had married a few years earlier and had twin daughters who were the light of his life. The house that had once seemed so empty was now overflowing with family, with noise and laughter and love. Speech. Someone called out, and everyone turned expectantly to Quentin and Faith. Quentin stood, helping Faith to her feet beside him. At 63 and 55, they were still strong, still healthy, still very much in love. Quentin cleared his throat and looked around at all the faces watching them. 31 years ago, I went to an auction in Val Verde, he began. I heard an auctioneer call a woman barren like it was the worst thing he could say about her. And I knew I had to do something. Not because I was some kind of hero, but because I knew what it was like to lose someone to the terrible weight of expectations. I knew what it was like to wish I could have made someone understand that they were enough, just as they were. He turned to Faith, taking her hand. What I did not know was that this woman, this Faith Campbell, would become the love of my life. That she would take my broken heart and my empty house and fill them both with more joy than I ever thought possible. That she would teach me what it really means to be a family, to choose love over obligation, to build something real and lasting. Faith felt tears on her cheeks as Quentin continued. We have built something amazing together, not just a ranch or a house, but a family. A family that includes children who came to us through blood and children who came to us through choice, and the truth is, there is no difference. They are all ours. You are all ours, and we are so proud of every single one of you. Faith added her own words. When I stood on that auction platform, I thought my life was over. I thought I had been reduced to my worst failure, to the one thing my body could not do. But Quentin taught me that there are many ways to be a mother, many ways to build a family. He taught me that love is not about perfection or meeting expectations. It is about showing up every day and choosing each other, choosing to build something together even when it is hard. She looked around at all the faces she loved. You are our legacy. Not just our children and grandchildren, but the way you treat each other, the way you understand that family is about love and not just blood. That is what we wanted to pass on. That is what matters. The celebration continued late into the night, with music and dancing and stories. Faith and Quentin danced together under the stars, just as they had at their wedding, just as they had at countless celebrations over the years. His arms were still strong around her, his smile still made her heart skip, and she knew that every choice she had made had led her to this moment, to this man, to this life. No regrets, Quentin asked softly as they swayed together. Not a single one, Faith said honestly. You gave me everything I did not even know I needed. You gave me a home, a family, a purpose. You gave me love without conditions or expectations. You gave me myself back. You did the same for me, Quentin said. I was just going through the motions before you came along. You reminded me what it means to live, really live. They stayed up later than anyone else, sitting on the porch and watching the stars, comfortable in their silence, secure in their love. 31 years together, and Faith could not imagine her life any other way. That day at the auction, when the auctioneer had called her barren and Quentin had said she was free to love without fear, had set her on a path she never could have anticipated. She had found freedom, found love, found family. She had built a life that honored her true self, not the limited version others had tried to impose on her. And she had done it all alongside a man who valued her for exactly who she was. As the years continued to pass, Faith and Quentin grew old together with grace and gratitude. They watched their family continue to expand, new babies born and new marriages celebrated. They saw the Double Q Ranch thrive under Tommy and Samuel's management, evolving with the times but still maintaining the values of hard work and fair dealing that Quentin had instilled. They took walks together every evening when weather permitted, slower now but still hand in hand, still finding new things to talk about after all these years. They read together in the parlor, now furnished with comfortable chairs that accommodated aging bodies. They welcomed visits from children and grandchildren and great-grandchildren, their house always open, their love always abundant. In 1918, Quentin Quincy passed away peacefully at the age of 71, with Faith holding his hand and all their children gathered around. His last words were simple and true. "Thank you for 39 years of the best life a man could ask for," he said to Faith. "I love you, I have always loved you, I will love you still, wherever I am going." "I love you too," Faith said through her tears. "Thank you for giving me freedom. Thank you for giving me everything." After Quentin died, Faith grieved deeply but not hopelessly. She had known and been loved by a remarkable man. She had built a life that mattered. She had children and grandchildren and great-grandchildren who loved her. She stayed on at the ranch, still active and involved, still the matriarch of the family that she and Quentin had built together. She lived to be 84 years old, passing away peacefully in her sleep in 1938, 60 years after that fateful day at the auction in Val Verde. She died surrounded by family, in the house that had become home, having lived a life fuller and richer than she ever could have imagined when she stood on that platform feeling worthless and alone. At her funeral, Tommy, who was now 68 years old and grandfather himself, spoke about the woman who had chosen to be his mother. "Faith Quincy taught me what unconditional love looks like," he said to the gathered crowd. "She taught me that family is what you make it, that love is a choice we make every day. She took a broken boy who had been living on the streets and made him feel valued and wanted. She did the same for Lily, for Samuel, for Margaret, for all of us. She was not perfect. She had her moments of doubt and fear like anyone else. But she was real, and she loved with her whole heart, and she built something that will last long after we are all gone." They buried Faith next to Quentin, on the hill overlooking the Double Q Ranch, with a headstone that read, "Faith Campbell Quincy, 1855–1938, beloved wife, mother, grandmother, great-grandmother. She loved without fear and taught others to do the same." The Double Q Ranch continued to thrive under the management of Faith and Quentin's descendants. The family remained close, always gathering for holidays and special occasions, always remembering the lessons that Faith and Quentin had taught them about love and acceptance, and the true meaning of family. The story of how Faith and Quentin met became family legend, passed down through generations. How an auctioneer had called her Barren, and a rancher had said she was free to love without fear. How they had built a life together based on respect and partnership. How they had created a family that included children of blood and children of choice, and how they had never seen a difference between them. Their love story became a testament to the power of second chances, to the importance of valuing people for who they are rather than what they can produce. It became a reminder that family is built through love and choice and daily commitment, not just through biological connection. And every year, on the anniversary of that October day in 1878, when Faith stood on an auction platform in Val Verde, and Quentin stepped forward to offer her a different future, the family gathered to remember and celebrate. To honor the courage it took for Faith to trust again, and the wisdom it took for Quentin to offer respect instead of judgment. To celebrate the legacy of love they had built together, a legacy that would continue for generations to come. The old ranch house still stood, modernized over the years, but still recognizably the home that Faith had transformed from an empty shell into a place of warmth and welcome. The corrals and barns still bustled with activity. The cattle still grazed the rolling Texas hills. And on quiet evenings, when the sun set in brilliant oranges and reds across the western sky, you could almost feel the presence of Faith and Quentin, still watching over the family they had built, still loving without fear, still together in whatever comes after this life. Their story was not one of perfection or fairy tale romance. It was better than that. It was real. It was two broken people who found each other and chose to build something beautiful from their shared pain and hope. It was a testament to resilience and the transformative power of genuine love. It was proof that sometimes the worst moments of our lives can lead to the best things we will ever experience, if we are brave enough to accept the hand that reaches out to help us up. Faith Campbell had stood on that auction platform feeling worthless, defined by what she could not do, blamed for circumstances beyond her control. But Quentin Quincy had seen beyond that narrow definition to the woman herself, and in doing so, had given her the space to see it too. Together, they had built a life that honored the truth that people are more than their biology, more than their ability to meet society's expectations. They had proven that love, real love, is about acceptance and partnership and choosing each other every single day. And that legacy, that lesson, that love, lived on long after they were gone, in every child who was shown that they mattered regardless of where they came from, in every person who learned that family is what you make it, in every generation that understood that the truest measure of a life well lived is not what you produce, but who you love and how you love them. The auctioneer had called her Barren, meaning to diminish her. The rancher had said she was free to love without fear, and in doing so had given her everything. And together, they had proven that sometimes freedom is the greatest gift of all, and that love, when given without conditions, can heal even the deepest wounds and build something that will last forever.